Soul Wisdom Explored. We're going to talk about how our guidance systems are often utilized with different results depending on how far or how deep we go into certain subjects. There are some of us who traverse the realms of love and they stay in that vision of I'm always of love and I'm always adored, whether or not I portray myself as that or not. That's where we are with Brenda. And sometimes it can feel a little disconcerting if you feel like I'm not loved because of who I am and what I've been told or taught as a child perhaps, or even within the systems of government that we utilize in our vision. What we are experiencing with Brenda in the moment is a disparity in her heart and her soul. And what that is that her soul wants her to be free from the condemnation that many are portraying upon people like her who have these identities that are attached to the victimhood of who they are or to the emboldened nature of where I am. So this is how we can utilize these visions of, is this system or wisdom going to help me or enhance me? If it places me in a place of victimhood for who I am, that's when you would want to potentially look at it and say, is this the best place for me to start my quest of soulhood, right? When you get to the nature of I'm a soul and I'm here and I'm of wonder and amazement for who I am, sometimes we lose that vibration in our minds thinking there's something, it's like not quite right for us or it's wrong for us. So it's about inhibiting our expression sometimes when we say, oh, I thought I was supposed to take off every label of love and put it on somebody else for them to see them in that vibration. So Brenda does this very carefully with others. When she says, I'm feeling a connection with somebody and I'm not sure why I'm attracted to their vibration, because it's the words that they use or it's the moment of reflections that they offer that allow them to see deeper into issues perhaps than what she could have gone. But it's still a relevant expression of love for us here. You see, it's not always about riding with the highlight warriors. This is where people are highlighting her, saying she understands how to get along with just about everybody. She doesn't look at everyone as their own source of wisdom as of yet. Only in the fact that many are limiting themselves to bring forth their wisdom. So we are often in this space of limitation of who we really are. And so it's a process of discovery of those of us who are willing to be emboldened in our vibration to say, this is where I am in my moment. I'm somber in my moment with many souls because in essence, they bring me to that place of reflection of a time and place in which it has passed from my mind. And usually there's something to glean in those ideas. Now, we want people to understand that her past is also part of her present, and it is part of the future when it is enhanced with a different level of understanding from our souls about what was going on and what was truly happening behind the scenes. Now, sometimes those wisdoms are not the most pleasant to hear. Okay, people dumping on others left and right is where the spiritual enlightenment camp is in certain people's minds. In many minds, they think it's about saying there's something wrong with you or you're less than. Brenda doesn't go that route. She just has preferences for souls who are willing to look at her as wisdom as well. Many will say that this doesn't vibrate with me here because it doesn't affect us here. Many people assume that where Brenda is somehow off the planet in some other universal wisdom. But in essence, it's the nature of who we are vibrating. It's either 4 or 2. Some people will say, I vibrate in the nature of the beauty of the all. Whether or not I agree with it doesn't mean anything. So I am not necessarily needing to agree with everyone's ideas, especially about who I am, because that's a projection onto myself. And I understand that. I expect people to disagree with me about who I am. I expect people to understand the nature of who they are in their moments, wherever they land. What I am not willing to do is to degrade my own vision in order to make someone else's vision of who they are feel better about them, as if they had it all figured out, when in fact I know how to elevate myself enough to a particular, it's like a moment where I'm with someone whom I'm aware of on TikTok, of all places, as having higher levels of wisdom. This is why Brenda says, I hear from her soul and I honor her soul because I see the wisdom that she's already portraying herself as. And she herself has declared she's doing her own journey as a healing journey. This is what we do. So just because I'm able to bring through everyone's soul wisdom doesn't mean that I don't have my own tough spots, rough spots, and tender spots in my heart. I still get pandemonium from TikTok, is where many are going to laugh. And Brenda's like, oh, I'm in it to win it. I could go on and comment and say all these different things to different people, but I hold myself back because I'm honoring of their growth, their journey, and their wisdom. It is very difficult for us to say it's not the how or the when, it's more about the place. So for my own perspective, I don't go onto other people's pages and start commenting about everything that I know and what I perceive and experience and all of that. That's something that I do on my personal pages for myself for the most part. I know the difference between what my issues are and what is of a natural understanding of where we are as souls, as a collective, on this plane or on other levels of development. Okay? And I want people to understand the nature of Jesus as a soul that loved her, adored her, and cared for her. She has had different versions of souls who thought they were the embodiment of a certain soul, not the wisdom, but his actual soul, saying, I'm him. And she is very well aware of the discrepancies of what people are being led to believe about who they are as souls versus that soul's wisdom as it was in reality versus what's coming through in the books. Okay? And this is what was driving her banana, because in essence, the books are not accurate. They are not accurate in their perception of who we are now, especially. It doesn't mean that the words of wisdom are not granted as inspirational. Brenda's soul has told her this is of religious inspiration. It doesn't mean it is documented visions are there as well. We don't want to discount those souls that say, I was part of that play in life. These are souls that are vibrating in the wisdom of who they were in their world at one point in time. Okay? And we want people to understand that those wisdoms are very strong and honored for what they are in their wisdom, for they vibrate in the beauty of who they are as souls. Many have moved past the nature of who they were in their moments, and they are continuing to climb the ladder of love, as Brenda's soul says. So it's not about transparent visions. There are people that I know that still think that they're going to go sit in the lap of luxury with some man who happens to portray himself as that soul and say, oh yes, that's the nature of Santa Claus. Brenda equates the vision of what's coming with the revealing to children that Santa Claus was their parents' or loved ones most often, right? Santa didn't come to my doorstep and drop off gifts. It could have been volunteers from the community. We know that. But in essence, the childhood vision is about to be revealed in those visions, okay? And it's not a disparaging of the wisdom as it was, but it does hold others accountable for those souls that she says, those souls who came to her were honored for their wisdom in that vision that they created with, because they're creating anew with the vision. And so that's the nature of why Brenda is saying there's a difference between those who are utilizing those books as inspiration versus those who are trying to then force others to conform to those standards. That's not the nature of his soul, by the way. Okay? So it's not about saying, I love who I am always. We do. We're here, we're beating. So that's why we're not disparaging the nature of what love of self means. Okay? It's when you rise out of the nature of, I don't need to be somebody else in order to be attractive to others. I don't need to be somebody else to sit there and hold the wisdom of soul. For any soul that's vibrating among this plane, I could bring through those of past or future in essence, because those are those wisdom tellers that come to us from various places in time. And that's why people are a little concerned about that, because they say we're not supposed to give away too much information about the future. It's true. There are aspects of future that we definitely have access to, and it's so we don't change the level of understanding of love in which we're vibrating, which is a very good path for a lot of us. We're still in the transgressions of soul in some souls' minds, where we are saying to others they're less than who we are. This is where those who come in with those vibrations that say, I understand there's more going on, I don't know why others are not understanding that as well. So this could be the idea of those who are in the, religious inspiration, have that understanding of multidimensional understanding. And there are many who are saying, no, this is just fine for me here. And they're living their lives in the lap of luxury, just happening to be on this plane. That's the beauty. Most of us aren't thinking about the afterlife in every moment of every breath. Brenda is very much of I'm here listening to my soul tell me how to be, is what some would say. But it's more like my soul knows how to bring me wisdom about my life and my own soul from various places and times in which I operate. But because of our vibration, we really truly want people to experience the majority of their lives as they are here. It can often be a revelation to people when they say, what do you mean the multidimensional understanding? I thought this was about our souls as we are here. It's both. Okay? And if you are in that vision of, I'm just a person, flying free and clear of any spiritual enlightenment vision, we would say you get to have that as well. It's not about trying to be something you aren't. It's a natural process for many. Others are being flung into the vision of it without knowing it, and then they're getting condemned or diagnosed with other things. Okay, the Eastern philosophical religions and those of indigenous cultures are often very much celebrating those who have lifted themselves into that idea of, I am now vibrating in the nature of wisdom from souls unknown, right? Or cultures that have those honoring of those souls. And it's that kind of vision where people are saying, we want more of our souls to say it's going to be okay whether or not you believe in Jesus as a soul savior or not. Your souls are beauty whether or not you believe X, Y, or Z. You'll get the vision of what you've planted here. And that's why very many are more concerned about the nature of the afterlife. But others are like, I'm just getting a beautiful expression from my worshiping of his soul, so I'm going to continue to do that. But in essence, you're not just with them. You have to think about everyone that you're around and where they are, because these are the souls that you're truly creating with for the most part. So this is why there's a gratitude for all of our souls in whatever way we can. Now, Brenda struggles with that sometimes. I'm not one to do fake gratitude. Okay? I can honor the vision. I don't typically sit and throw out, gratitude to my audience and all of that. I understand it as an honoring of all of us, whether or not you agree with me or not. And that's why people assume that there's this idea that somehow my vibration might not be in that same level, right? I'm not here to be a servant to anybody. That's another mistaken identity that many are putting on. It can serve them well. Brenda's like, I've done so much people pleasing in my life, I'm breaking free from it. That's the vibration that she took it as. There's a definite understanding of if you are expecting her to do or be something for you that you think you need as a soul's vision, you might want to think again. You're going to get vibrations of love from who you really are, not just who you think you are. Okay? And it's the beauty of your soul to be able to express that vision. That's why Brenda loves soul vision, because she says, I know that our souls will always say, whatever is granted is of beauty. So even those souls who are vibrating in the beauty of the books, they may hear those passages coming to them from those visions, but they will understand that. Okay? It doesn't mean that that's all you are as a soul. It doesn't mean that those other areas of your life where you aren't vibrating in the nature of the passages of old aren't going to come through. This is about living our lives, enjoying our lives as much as we can in the peace and comfort of our own homes, is where many are. And others are very much, I study outside of the church, or I went inside and I did the vision of love from various books or topics aplenty. Many are thinking this is about religious institutions. It's not. It's about the somber moment that she was in, and then she shifted her energy just enough to say, I understand now I'm being affected not only by the weather in which I'm vibrating, the shift in the energy. She feels shifts in her body. Okay? So this is not, messing around with her. She will know where you are. She will know if you're vibrating in a beautiful wisdom with her. She will know if you've got it all figured out for yourself. And she will honor it. Everyone is in this vision of, I've got it all figured out for all of us, right? This is the cohesive union of many who are definitely not on that path. But what happens is there can be many who are saying, it's my wisdom that says this is how it is, and I can see the future in it. And yet they're not able to see how other people's vibrations are more enlightened, perhaps, to the nature of what soul level understanding is, which doesn't discredit anybody's vision as bad or good. It's just what it is. It's an experience garnered, is where Brenda's soul takes her, right? We've garnered the experiences. Let's continue to create more of them. What kind is what most are more concerned about, right? And that's why Brenda was like, oh, I'm tired of those that are making me work because they just want to be right. They just want to be right. And she's saying, you're right for you. You're right for you. You may be able to sit there and say, a lot of people are vibrating in the nature of, see how many people love me for who I am? But when you go to the nature of, I'm, a business person, and so, the customer is always correct. Brenda doesn't fly by that kind of vision. She's more like, if you can't handle the heat, then you need to let go. Because what she brings is so strong in the understanding that too many people assume they know what it is that she's doing. She's had to deal with so many souls who were mistaken about her strengths and her wisdom. It's a humbling procedure she went through. Hearing those souls who keep telling her there's something wrong with you based on my system of psychology that is diagnosing others as schizophrenic or schizoid or whatever. And she said, bullshit. I've got the wisdom and I know how to prove it to you. Let me bring you your source of wisdom as it is known, right? That's what she gets. And she still gets those who are kind of like, that's the idea of the calling out. She's done calling out. But in essence, it is the nature of some souls who need to be told, you don't have it figured out for me. You don't. You may want to. It can be threatening to your ego to know that there are other souls who are reaching different levels of love of self and others. And that's the nature of there are no others. It's all of us creating together as one in most people's mind. Brenda says it's the all, because it's not just about humans. It's about the consciousness of various attributes and different experiences that we have on this plane outside of the vision of soul. Okay, the appreciation of our whole world in essence. Okay, and so that's when you get a higher level of understanding about the weather is determined by who we are as souls. The weather. Now, that vision is a thought form. It's like re-enhanced over and over and over. It's also something Brenda has experienced in her understanding of her soul tells her what's going to happen. Her soul lets her figure things out on her own sometimes because she goes through the process of discovery with her family on the soul level. It can be humbling to know what people are thinking about you. And she still grants them the love because she says, if I were them, I would too. I understand. I understand that I'm not the easiest person to work with sometimes, because I've had so many close calls with females on the other side of the veil who are trying to say, just focus on females and neglect the males. They're not worth it. And she says, that's not where I am. I will not do that disservice to myself, my family, my friends, or the communities at large, or society at large. Doesn't mean there's not lessons that we're learning within the vision of separation of species or dynamics of gender identity and whatnot. Okay, the threat to the male ego is what many are working with in the minds of psychology or sociology. But it's truly a soul level understanding that we're going to delve into when it comes to that idea of we are separating ourselves in this moment, with many men who are thinking that that is an insult. It's a beautiful expression from many females who are feeling the separation due to the nature of the behaviors aimed at them. So instead of saying this is a beautiful soul, I'm going to treat them as I would treat myself, many women or self-identified women are saying, look at how they are treating us. They aren't there yet with their understanding that we are together in unison fighting the good fight. That's where a lot of those souls are. So it's not bad. It needs to be done. Brenda was hearing from the soul of Susan B. Anthony a long time ago about different issues, including the racial biases she participated in. Okay? Now we want others to understand that this is the nature of why Brenda struggles with the identities of male souls sometimes, because she's like, don't even think you're going to come in some superior vision over who I am. Don't even think that you've got more wisdom about who I am, because that's really where it's at. Who am I? Right? That's where a lot of people are. Who am I? That's where Brenda is. Who am I? I did the discovery approach to who I was. And then when I go out, it's how I utilize other souls to figure out more about myself. And it doesn't mean that my disagreeing with you means that there's something wrong with you. I just am then able to make a better decision to be who I am, or it reinforces the nature of my wisdom as soul. And going, yes, I remember what it was like to feel that way. Yes, I remember what it was like to feel angry about X, Y, or Z. Yes, I remember what it was like to hurt about this, this, this. And so I still process emotions just like anybody else. But when I'm in my elevated soul state, no, not really. It feels good. And that's the wisdom that everyone wants to understand. And that's a vibrational shift that many are starting to understand. It means that we get to be it all the time. That's what others are saying. We're there all the time, feeling our heart, feeling our souls, feeling the wisdom, feeling the guidance, going up to people, loving on them, telling them they're the wisest souls they could ever be on this plane. On this plane. We have access to it if we want it. That's where a lot of those spiritual warriors come in and say, she's going to fight for everyone here, because in essence, don't demean your abilities to be who you are. Not everyone's going to be doing this vision like I do, or anybody else. We're all here doing fun things. Not everybody on this plane. There are reasons. It doesn't mean we don't try to do better. Doesn't mean we don't help people. But it might be that sometimes when we go above and beyond for the same soul over and over, they haven't learned their lessons yet on how to get them out of the situation in which they're finding themselves. Stop rescuing everybody. Stop rescuing everybody and focus on your soul. This is where her soul was with her. She's like, stop rescuing people who are making choices over and over and over. This is the wisdom of soul. We're trying to get them to grow and spiral out of the victimhood of who they are. This is why you often see people repeating patterns of behavior. I know my patterns. And I'm in a process of releasing some of those visions. Now, one of that is my creativity went amok. And I started listening to other souls, and then I started getting different kinds of messages. And this is when others in our spheres of influence often are in their strength and their wisdom, and they say, oh, I can see you better than you can see you, without the vision of understanding that most people will never know what it's like to be inside a soul who's of introverted nature and does not disclose the majority of their lives to anybody, because it's an internal processing of all of our experiences, all of our wisdoms in each moment. It's a collective vision within itself. That's what some people are starting to understand. So this is why soul wisdom is so strong, because every thought and action that you have had or experienced, not only with yourself but with others, has been noted and is aware. Okay? And many are, it's nothing to be afraid of. It can be humbling though, But it also can be magical because our souls do want us to enjoy our lives. So it's not about trying to get people to walk on water. Walk on water, Brenda. That's what her soul would say. Walk on water because you deserve it. But in essence, it's more like that's a soul grouping aspect of that vision. It's her soul from a different level. But she was walking on eggshells for a long time around people. And that's the destructive vision that can happen when you go through this process, because then you start to feel the pushback of people who are not ready to hear your discoveries. Okay? Walking on water is just symbolic. It's not about being better than. It's something that's available to us if we choose to go there. It can take years and years and years of self-discovery to get where I've gone. And sometimes I lower myself in my vibration for the nature of who I am, just so I can see what it feels like. And it doesn't feel as good, I can tell you that. It doesn't feel as happy, I can tell you that. But it is real. And it's the expression of letting me feel it so I can say, how do I change this expression that doesn't, it's like, demean others' values of less than for others. That's the hardest thing she deals with, to be honest. Most likely. Very few people have ever seen a superior being in the flesh. Very few. Because it's an honor of our mistaken identity. Others are going to say, oh, I'm superior. We all are gifted, talented, and have various abilities. And the wisdom that we hold is very strong. What you're doing, though, is people are hitting different frequencies of love. So if a frequency feels good for you, it's a great place to be. But it's not about being smarter or wiser or more, so others are going to say hallucinatory. Others are vibrating in those wisdoms, but they have issues in the minds, is what some would say. And it depends on what's going on with each soul, because some people are lost in the vibration of the genius of their soul. Very few souls understand that those who were claimed to be of genius were also tapped into the nature of soul wisdom. And guidance even. Okay? And we all have aspects of genius within us. But Brenda has noticed that those souls that are caretaking many others are often in the vision of we all rise in our vibration at some point. So let us all enjoy the beauty of who we are here and now. Okay? So this is one of those exploratory videos. And guarded is where Brenda sometimes goes with her soul, trying to remember that her soul brings her what's needed and adored in the output of who she is. She is so strong on the soul level that many deny that she's even touched this plane in a while. That's what it feels like when you go to your soul. You can feel like you're floating in this world. Okay, so that's that nature of symbolic visions for the most part. Others are vibrating in the nature of, I'm traveling or whatnot. It depends. There's a lot going on in the spiritual realms. So with that, I want to say I'm wiser than most. That's where some souls go with their mind. And we honor those visions for those who bring through the guidance in the ways in which they do, whether it be through their own soul's unique vision or those who are going outside of themselves into the unknown and caretaking others' visions that come through as channels or psychics. Psychic vision is enhanced in Brenda without knowing it. And when we do that vision, people say, what does that mean? It means it comes true. And it's not about just prediction, it's about knowing. And her soul is embodied in a certain plane that is beyond his understanding, and that's why there are certain souls that discuss the clarity of her messages. So this can be seen, it's one aspect of Brenda, where sometimes her visions can seem dissuaded from coming through because they're strong in the pain and discomfort of who we are sometimes. And then we realize, yeah, we get it. We understand. It's not always a pleasant trip to the unknown. Okay? So with that, I want to say thank you for watching. Have fun today. Enjoy the world. This is what everyone's saying. Enjoy the world. It's your last trip, my love. That's what a lot of people are assuming too. Oh, I'm done with this plane. I'm not coming back. It's a gorgeous place to be. Okay, this isn't the hell realm, but it's where we can often create it. And it means our experiences here can be horrific, so we want to make sure that we create beautiful visions for those around us as well. And that means an acknowledgement of their own strengths, beauties, and their own guidance that they're showing us in their own ways, most often without even knowing it. Because that's where Brenda's like, oh, they're definitely showing me a lot. And it's not a bad thing. It's beautiful, but it's also, there's a lot of stuff that can be revealed that people don't realize they're revealing. So anyways, I want to say thank you again, and have a beautiful, beautiful day. As my soul would say, remember, stay curious, wise, and soulful.